In the month of May, Talenza are running a showcase, a promotion of Australian SME business, because if we don't buy and engage with Australian businesses, we will not get out of it. And there's some amazing success stories, businesses that are thriving. And one today I want to introduce you is a very exciting one, very prevalent today, is Danielle, the founder, owner of Pioneera. So welcome, and I'll hand you over to give yourself a little quick intro and blurb.
Hey Sully, hi everyone. Yes, happy to be with you today. I'm Danielle Owen Whitford, the CEO and founder of Pioneera. Started Pioneera a couple of years ago after quite a long corporate career, so doing something different.
So that was obviously my first question off the ranks. You don't many. You get people that might dip their toe in the water. You've had a horrendously amazing, successful career and went to a group exec level, and then you've gone and flipped and dipped into a tech startup. Like, how's it been? What have you learned? Why?
Yeah, I'll start with the why first. So I loved being in the corporate world and loved what I did, but burnt out in 2016 and didn't see the signs. And when I look back on it, the signs were everywhere. They were for me, they were for the workplace, but none of us saw them. So when I stepped out and got healthy and well, I realized that that was avoidable and I could actually help people avoid burning out like I'd burnt out. And technology was the key. So that's how I ended up in a startup. It wasn't a deliberate, corporate to startup. It was, I see a problem, I think I can help people. And so that's how Pioneera came about. And I kind of love it. It's all of the fun stuff that I like to do in corporate. So we get to move quickly. We get to genuinely help people, which is great. I would love the resources and the support that I had in a corporate. That would be wonderful, because in a small business, you're doing a lot of that yourself. But it's wonderful. I wouldn't change it for the world.
And then would you do it again? Because if you know what you know now, would you start your own business or set up again?
Oh, wow, that's a good question. Look, I would do it again. Lots of people talk about themselves as serial entrepreneurs. I don't know if I'd go that far. I think where I would see a problem that I think I could solve, absolutely, I would go for it again. I'd learn and I'd do things differently. Just like if I went back into the corporate world, which I don't have any plans to do, but if I did, I would also do that differently. So I think that's the beauty of experience. But yeah, I'd give it another go.
So talk, if you don't mind, talk us a little bit more about that burnout then, how it drove you to set it up, because obviously that was the principle behind how it's come about. So are we allowed to touch upon that, in terms of...
Sure. Yeah, sure. Look, it's taken me a long time to talk about it, actually. When I actually burnt out, the doctors and health professionals kept telling me you were burnt out, and I was burnt out, and I didn't think it was real. I thought it was, one of those pretend kind of illnesses. So it took me a long time to actually understand it, and it's only because physical things were happening that I realized something was wrong. And then it took me a long time to talk about it. So I went into a technology accelerator in 2018 to build Pioneera, and it took them 6 months to convince me that I should talk about this, because I was just really ashamed. I was ashamed that I had burnt out, that I hadn't seen the signs, that I had allowed that to happen to me, to happen to my family. I was a single mum, so that put a lot of pressure on my kids, who were quite little at the time. So I'm happy to talk about it now, but it did take me a long time to get to this point, and I'm actually quite grateful for it, because it helped me see that there was a different path for me, and there was a different way of doing some of the things that I wanted to do. I've always naturally been very aligned to people, very, focused on people, led people for a long time, very focused on delivering for customers. And I figured out there was a way that I could do that differently. So that was kind of a revelation. I also learned that there was a different way of working for me, and I need to be very careful of not dropping back into the old pattern. And Pioneera was a little bit cathartic, because it helps put technology around preventing me from falling back into the old patterns, but also then at the same time helping other people. The premise is really simple. We just take, language and behavior that we use every day, and we look for early warning signs in that. So whilst it was an awful time, it's been, I think, quite a gift for me in terms of how I could contribute to the world.
We'll come back to some of that stuff, because I didn't write these questions down, but I think it'd be good to actually have a bit of a learn, actually, for some people who might watch this, hopefully, because as you know, personally, I obviously got myself sick last year doing the same thing, so I think it'd be good to But either do it today or do it another time for sure. But then, so the problem, obviously you touched upon it. So the problem that you're in is the burnout in the workplace. But how does product do that then?
Yeah, so the problem we see is that workplaces put so much pressure on people now to deliver because the companies have to deliver to stay competitive. And the way that we tend to manage people or understand people in companies is either through surveys or we ask the managers to observe people. And our view is both of those methods are broken. So we're in highly digital, highly fragmented workforces today that we're all working from home. COVID has accelerated that, but that was heading for the future of work anyway. So the ways of understanding people and helping people are no longer relevant. So what Indy serves to do is to turn that on its head. So we created a bot called Indy, and what she does is she integrates into your communication systems and she looks for the early signs of stress and wellness in your language and in your behavior. And it's really simple. We kind of think about it like a spell checker for stress, because we know that our language changes as we get stressed and our behavior also starts to change. And this is based on science. So this is not just me making it up. There is quite a bit of research that indicates that language is quite an insight and a window to our mental state. And this is often the way that doctors make assessments of us when we're sitting in their chair based on what we're saying and what we're doing. So it's a simple way of identifying how people are. It all happens in real time. So you're not waiting for weeks for survey results. You get data in real time. And the second hypothesis, or the second thing that we think is broken, is that corporates send people off to, or companies send people off to training programs, and they're usually pretty good. But when you're in the heat of battle and under pressure, you can't remember what that training program told you to do to manage yourself. So what Indy does is she pops up in real time and she sends you tips. And those nudges in real time just help you manage your behavior and stay healthy and well. So that's the way that we're addressing it. And we're getting some good outcomes with our customers.
Yeah, and it's so true. Like this, I think you either got to be really comfortable with the person you're sat opposite with or comfortable in your skin, because sentiment in how people communicate, you can pick it up. Well, some people, I think, well, more than others, but unless you care or need to care, get paid to care, you leave it, right? And you just don't want to ask that question, are you okay? Which is one of the great campaigns for mental health, but it is such a world that we live in that either you personally, me, for you, you felt you couldn't put your hand up and talk about burnout or feeling tired and stressed. But what do businesses ignore? Obviously, businesses, they're buying from you, they're buying this product, they're trying to do something better. But why do you think for years they haven't addressed it more? And what more can they do today?
Yeah, I think it's really tough, because I think certainly my experience, and I think many people's experience, is that you're just doing so much. Like, you have so much on your plate. We're all racing to achieve all of our tasks we have to do in the day. And so because we have our head down and we're focused on that, we don't check in with ourselves, because we're too busy to check in with ourselves. But then we're also too busy to check in with those around us. As much as we care about people and we love people around us, it takes time and effort and capacity to check in. So I think the fact that we're rushing and we're doing so much just makes it impossible for us to check in on ourselves and to check in on other people. And I think organisations have tried. Like, I think mental health focus, certainly in the last couple of years, has become much more prevalent. We talk now about depression and anxiety and stress, whereas years ago it was taboo, and you were actually discriminated against, or it was held against you if you asked for help because you couldn't cope. So I think that has moved in the last couple of years. It's become socially more acceptable, and organisations are looking for ways of doing this. The thing with organisations, though, is that they stick with their tried and true methods because they're safe, and it helps them manage risk. To try new things introduce some new risk, and if they're already busy and they're already working really hard, it's hard to bring some new things on board. And that's what we see across all of our clients and our own personal experience. People do want to do something about it. It's just they're already busy, they have a lot on, they're trying to serve their customers. So where does this fit in the priority of what they should focus on?
So you've got the traditional employee SIS scheme, right? But then it's down, the onus of those schemes is then for you to call. And if you're too busy, you won't, or you're too scared, or you overthink it, or you have to push them to do it. And if you push them to do it, then generally won't listen. So the thing that I love about this is that it's there, it's watching, it's listening, it's in the background, and it can be personalized and actually can give you real-time facts and feed you, hey, you probably need to take a break, you know, or and from a boss, from a business owner or leadership team, it's like you can flag the high risk, right? And actually facts speak louder than words typically. So I do think, yeah, some of those, you know, not archaic employee schemes are there. I think they're dated, but I love it. And they're actually a light question then. So where did indie come from then? Why did you call your bot indie? What's the...
So we started our first MVP. You know, anyone in the agile startup world will understand, you know, MVP, minimum viable product. The first one we did, I actually named after a man I used to work with, fantastic guy called Ron. So it was called Uncle Ron. And we did that MVP with one of our banking customers, and they loved it, right? But then I started getting feedback about, is that the right name? And should it be Uncle Ron or Dr. Ron? So we were tossing up with the name. And then I had a situation where I was sitting at the dining table one day, madly trying to get this proposal done. And I was yelling at my kids to get ready for school, and it was just not a good time. And my daughter walked up to me and she said, Mum, if you get this, are you going to work like this again? And it just floored me. I thought, holy hell, after everything I've gone through, a bit of pressure, I dropped straight back into the old work pattern. So I closed my laptop and I said, no, I will not do this again. And her name is Indy. So when I was telling people this story, people were like, oh my God, Indy did for you what you want Pioneera to do for the world. And I went, yeah, absolutely. So that's how the bot became Indy. My son is Baxter, so he was like, what about me? So we've named the database at the back end that holds all the data and analyzes all the data. That's Baxter. So Indy and Baxter have to work together for us to give a good product to our clients. So when they're fighting with each other at home, that's what I remind them.
Amazing. And what's the tech, what's it built on then? What's the stack built on?
Yeah, so we're all cloud-based. So we wanted to make it as easy as possible for people to work with us. So we're all cloud-based environment. We sit up in the Google Cloud. We're all encrypted. So we take data and security very, very seriously, and we've built it from the ground up. So we're everything's encrypted. When we work with organizations, we provide de-anonymized data to managers. So that means if you're in a team, you can see trends and patterns of the team, but you can't identify any individuals in the data. And that was really important to us because users told us right in the beginning, I love that you're doing this, but I don't want my boss to know that I'm stressed because I don't want to be targeted. Whilst that was sad for us to hear, we understood that. So individuals can get their own data, but managers and the organization can't see the individual data in a way that identifies that individual. So that's the way that we've built it. It's all because it's all on the cloud. You can access it from any communication system. So we work in Slack, we work in Microsoft Teams, in Gmail and email, and we have built our own reporting and authentication system. So you just go onto our website and you can access your reports through our authentication system. So you don't have to use your organisation's systems to be able to get your data.
Genius, the world we live in today. And then what impacts have you seen? So obviously you've been there's not many startups that their first client base is absolutely top tier one. So you've been highly successful in securing some good clients from the early days. So what impacts have you seen COVID, because it's obviously present today, on them? Yeah. And how is this helped?
Yeah, so we have been lucky. We've gotten some wonderful advocates within large organisations on board in the early days. And there's a couple of teams, one team in particular we've been working with in one of the big banks who've been using Indy now for more than a year. They started as one of our pilot teams and they've continued because of the value. And what we've been seeing with them has been really interesting. So we've seen a pattern in some teams early on where we saw long chronic periods of stress and not a lot of wellness. And now what we're seeing 6 months later is we're seeing much shorter, intense periods of stress followed by wellness, but also more intense periods of productivity. So in our data, we see stress and wellness at the same time. In those short bursts, that's periods of productivity. We're seeing a lot more productivity out of that team. And we're also seeing them recover from stress a lot faster. And what was interesting is I was on a call with the leader with other people in her organisation, and she was explaining to them, actually, this is what Pioneera does and this is what we've got from Indy. So it was just amazing hearing a customer feedback to us some of the things that we hadn't even picked up. So I hadn't even picked up that their recovery from stress was a lot faster than before. So she was keeping track of it. So we've been very lucky to have those guys on board from the beginning. COVID's been interesting because we have shifted literally overnight to an environment that people didn't expect, and that creates a whole lot of stress in and of itself, but we've also got a health crisis on top of it. So what we've been able to do is help our customers and a pipeline of potential customers, hopefully, be able just to support their team when they're not literally sitting in the office with them, and give them some peace of mind. And that's been very well received for different parts of the economy.
One or two examples of customer successes you've had? I know you've talked me through a couple, but have you got any that you're really proud of that we can share so people can understand some of the other positive impacts it's had?
Yeah, so one of the ones I'll share, and I won't give company names away, forgive me, I haven't got their permission to talk about their name, but a couple of things that we saw, interestingly, one of our clients, as COVID-19 rolled out, the very senior executives were doing briefings for people, as you do, all companies did that, I did the same for my team, but what we started to see was a period of stress. So we saw a spike of stress at a certain point every day, and so I was talking to the team to say, what's going on at this time of the day? They're like, oh, that's the XX person's COVID updates. And we're like, oh, okay. So what we were able to do was give the data to the manager immediately. So she was able to put things into place. So what she did is she did a setup before the briefing, and then she did check in after the briefing, and we saw that stress spike go away. So simple things like that. But otherwise, it would have taken that manager probably a month or weeks for her to figure out that was something that was going on. So that was a really good win from that team there. Another team we saw before COVID, actually, they had taken a risk and run a team activity on a Friday afternoon. And anyone who runs teams, that Friday afternoon, everyone's kind of in wind down, or that's when the wheels come off and everything falls apart at 4 o'clock on a Friday. But they took a risk and they ran a team activity on a Friday afternoon. And we didn't know they were doing that, but we were just watching all of their indicators go up. So we were seeing sentiment go up. We were seeing engagement in their channels and participation go up. And so I rang the manager, it's very early days, and said, what's going on there today? I wasn't even in the same state as them. And they said, oh, we're doing X, Y, and Z. I said, look at your data. And so they had a beautiful measurement tool to talk about how successful this event had been, and they could use that with their very senior executive to say we should do this again. They could quantify the value of the activity. They could show the team, actually the team really loved it, and that team manager was thrilled because she got that data in real time. She didn't have to wait and ask people. She literally had that data as it was happening. So there's some good things that we've been a part of.
Real-time data on happiness and stress. It's like, amazing. The world that we live in with AI technology today always blows my mind. Sorry, but
that's cool. That's cool.
What would be ideal client then? So for you, if people are watching this and going, shit, this is actually the future for us, would love this. What's a typical ideal client for you guys?
Yeah, so we want to work with anyone actually who wants to help their people. So an ideal client for us is someone who is an organisation that's usually pretty focused on their people and is wanting to kind of early adopters. So the technology, the technology itself, some elements aren't new, but the way that we put it together is pretty new. So we look for companies that are early adopters, that are passionate about their people, and actually see the value of keeping people well and the impact on productivity. It sounds simple, but there's some organisations vary on that spectrum. So if that's your organisation, please get in contact with us. We're on pioneera.com. We also have a special this month for small businesses. We're very aware that small businesses, particularly like ours, you're doing it tough now with COVID. So we have a special for the month of May. So you can access Indie and 3 months of data for half price. And that's really simple. You can just go onto our website and sign up for it. If you have Slack, you can download into your Slack channels, your public channels immediately. If you have Microsoft Teams, we need to work with you a little bit to get it on. But yeah, as I said, that ideal customer is someone who has people that are on their devices or, quite a bit. And so then we've got some data that we can work with and help them with.
I think this obviously ties into the future workplace, right? Because obviously there's already 2 large clients that I've spoken to in recent weeks that are actually going to keep, if people want to stay working remote, they can stay working. But obviously there's going to be some engagement issues with that, because I think people obviously enjoy it, but I think a tool like this actually, with the future workplace where more teams are distributed, whether it's locally or internationally, like it's an actual real good indicator if someone's engaged, right? And productivity's good, mental health's good.
Yeah, I think so. When we started this out a couple of years ago, we did a whole lot of user research from, people in big companies right through to small companies. And the one thing that came up very quickly was that people that aren't full-time employees of organizations, so they could be contractors or gig workers or consultants working across multiple organizations, they felt disconnected from the company. So they liked a tool like this, helped them feel that someone was there to support them and be on their side. And as we've gone the last couple of years, we've seen more and more of that in terms of the type of work. There are less full-time employees in organizations these days. So there's definitely a group of people there we know we can support. The same as you said about working from home. So managers, typically when I talk to them about this, say, look, I love this product, but I sit with my team and I see my team, and part of my job as a manager is to keep an eye on them. And I totally agree with that. That's what I see as part of a leader's role, is to make sure that you're looking after your team. But when you're in an environment where you can't do that, then what we do is we just augment your ability to do that. So you still need to be a manager, you still need to be a leader, but what we give is we give you some data and we give you that extra support to be able to do that, rather than you having to do what some of our customers were doing, which is ringing people every day or messaging them every day. That's a huge impulse for managers, and like anything, once they get busy, that's going to fall by the wayside. So we just give them that extra sort of support. And the team extra support. So, sorry, Sully, I'll slightly digress, but one thing was interesting with one of our teams. They were having some, challenges in the team, and I don't know if they didn't want to speak up, or I don't know what was happening, but they started saying to their manager, "What does Indy say?" So they had like an independent third party. So none of them got into trouble when they were saying something, but they could say, "What does Indy say?" I thought that was fascinating. I'm like, oh, wow. So we also give the teams a voice. So if you aren't comfortable speaking to your manager, or you don't think it's the right thing to do, you don't know how to do it, Indy can give you a voice as well.
Absolutely. And I've been leading teams for years, and I hate it. You get to that point and it's something so small that they just wouldn't talk to you. You wouldn't have had a problem with, but then that transpires into something bigger and resentful, and sometimes hard to come back from those points. But it is hard. I do feel, and some people are natural at, talking up to managers or raising concern, but yeah, love it.
No, that's fine.
So then, what advice then? So if other people were sat in a corporate job, they think they've got a solution to a problem, and they're looking at someone like yourself, go, well, if you've done it, I can do it. What advice would you give someone if they wanted to take the leap of faith like you had, or have gone through an experience like you and wanted to put it to good use? What advice would you give them if they were going to set up?
Yeah, look, I get asked this a lot now. So I would say get started. So if you have a problem that you know you can solve, and everyone has some expertise. So I'm not a coder, so I'm not a technology person. So I came into this to start a technology company, and I'm not a technology person. And people kept telling me, well, you're crazy. And then my CTO, who's brilliant and spent 3 years in Silicon Valley doing this for other companies and now it's with me, said to me, yeah, but you're a domain expert. So everyone has an expertise in something. So if you're an expert in an area and you think you have a problem that you can solve, then just start doing it. You don't need a whole lot of money. You don't need a whole lot of resources. What you want to start doing is actually interviewing customers and interviewing users and just see whether or not people will buy the product. And then it doesn't have to be big bang. You can start something on the weekends. You can start something at night, start to see whether or not you get some traction. Someone said to me in the very early days, just put an ad up on Facebook and see if people click through to the website. And if people click through, then you've got some demand, which I thought was interesting. So once you feel like you've got something, then you can look at, other options. But I think if you want to do it, just get started. Don't wait.
How helpful has the tech community been for you then, or even like the VCs, the investors, general community? Have you found it to be quite approachable and helpful?
Yeah, look, I found it to be great, actually. So I was new to startups. When I said I had a problem I think I could solve, someone said to me, you're talking about a startup. And I very naively said, what's a startup? So it was a whole new world for me, but I found people have been incredibly generous, particularly other founders. So other founders that are 2 or 3 or 4 years ahead of me have been very generous with their time and their advice. Customers, as I said, I found some customers. A couple of my clients actually have been in startups before and then transitioned into corporate. So we had a good balance because I had the corporate background. We could kind of help each other out. So I found it to be, hugely valuable. Investing is, the investing community is great, very interesting. Raising money is a whole new challenge in and of itself. I won't even get started on that. But I have managed in every part of the, I guess the startup community to find great people that are willing to give their time and effort. And I do the same in return. So I mentor a few people. I'm very happy to have, chats with people that are starting out to help them out, because I think we need to help each other to keep moving forward. And I was lucky, I had a very good, strong corporate network. So if I have questions about, how do I deal with this data, or what do I do with that contract, I have some people that I can call and get some advice. The biggest thing that I've learned, actually, if you're going to do any of this, is learn to ask for help. So I haven't been very good at doing that. I like to kind of think I need to go it alone. I'm sure my ex-husband would agree with that. But what I've learned over the last couple of years is I don't know everything. But rather than being scared of making a decision, I took it as an opportunity to learn. And I've gotten much better at asking for help and asking for advice.
And actually, that's such a valid point. Like I've always said for years, people love talking about what they know. So if you need help on any specific topic, you ask the people that know about it. They'll talk to you probably to a point where you leave the conversation because they'll just keep talking about it. Actually, if you've got any, you can call anybody that, even if they don't know you, and ask them advice on their particular domain, and they'll talk to you quite comfortably. If you talk to somebody who doesn't care about the topic or not, obviously they won't. But on the burnout piece, then, to go back to something earlier on, just to give a snippet into this then. So if someone's feeling like they've got burnout, what advice would you give them then, or what would be how do someone cope with it at the minute?
Yeah, I think if you're starting not to feel great, because burnout can manifest in a number of different ways. So for me, I just started to feel that the job was just like it was annoying. It wasn't hard. It just, everything became difficult because what I had realized is that I had lost my joy and I'd lost the love for what I was doing. So for some people it manifests and they actually get sick. I got sick, but I got sick after I lost the enthusiasm for it. So if you're starting to feel more than tired, like constantly exhausted, having trouble getting out of bed. I would get up in the morning and just feel like I could sleep for another 8 hours, but I wasn't sleeping well at night. So it will manifest itself in different ways. But if you're just not quite feeling yourself for whatever reason, my advice would be just to stop and take a bit of stock. So actually just start thinking about, well, when do I feel like that? Do I know why I feel like that? And start thinking about, how do I feel about my work? How do I feel about my life? All of those sorts of things. There are some simple things you can do. So, meditation was great for me. It helped me improve my sleeping, eating well, exercising, all of those sorts of things. They will definitely help. If you're really struggling or if you don't know what to do, then get some help. There are some great support out there. Lifeline, Beyond Blue, lots of really good support. Beyond Blue's got some fantastic resources up there right now, particularly for COVID-19. Jump on our website. There's lots of ways that you can get some help. But don't suffer. Don't suffer alone. Go to your GP if you want to. There's lots of telehealth options. Have a chat with your GP. Just say, I'm not quite feeling myself. I went for a long time just thinking that I was busy. I just thought that I was busy and I was stressed and I had a big job, and that's what happens when you're a single parent and you have a big job. And I went for a long time like that, not realizing that something wasn't quite right. So if you're feeling like that, just, get some help and go from there.
And last question then. So a lot of people will have more time on their hands. What 3 books would you recommend for reading at the minute? What's your 3 favorite books?
Okay. I'm ashamed. I've got 2 on my bookshelf that I could show you right now, actually. I will show them, one sec. Sorry, you're not probably expecting that in your interview, Sully. So this has been a really great one that was recommended to me, actually. you do is who you are, and this is about cultures and creating cultures in workplaces by, you know, a great entrepreneur and now investor. So that's been really good. High Performance Habits. I love this book. This guy, Brendan Burchard, he actually gone to a website. He's got a website. He's got a whole lot of courses. So I love this book, and you can actually do an assessment yourself, free assessment about whether or not you're a high performer. So that was kind of good. And I'm reading another book, just another, I don't even know the name of it actually, but I'm reading another like fiction book. I can't remember the name, to be honest, but I need to, I have found for myself that my brain goes 24/7 unless I force it to focus on something else. So meditation for me, reading is the only way that I stop my brain thinking. So I always make sure that I've got a book that's a like a fiction book that I can read and just stop thinking about work. Otherwise I burn out again.
Cool. Well, appreciate you being involved in this. I think if anyone's listening, obviously some great insights to get to know, obviously, Danny, who's the founder of Pioneera. But in simple, really, if you care about your team and you want to obviously, you know, do something about your team and drive more productivity, then reach out to you guys direct, and we'll put the link and stuff up in the video. But thanks a lot for being a part of the series. Obviously, wish you well, and we'll chat soon.
Great. Thank you for having me. Stay safe, everyone.